The Book of Nine Secrets is a legend that was passed on all over the continent. In it, the Demon Emperor wrote down long-lost teachings, after which he entered everything he got into his book. The ancient Demon King is the strongest on the entire continent. All his knowledge was recorded in a book, which was subsequently lost. By practicing the knowledge from this book, a person could become the strongest, commanding the world in his hands. This book is now in the hands of the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor Duel sat on his intimidating throne, with a red eye on the back. This information has become known to everyone, and now he is the target of all martial artists because of the book that is in his hands. On the flying island, which people flew around on their swords, there was a building where the emperor was sitting. One of them approached the master on the throne and reported bad news. Their detachment in the mountains was destroyed. The speaker's name was Zhao Cheng. He was a disciple of the emperor. He assumed that the 7 emperors would be here very soon. The emperor asked the young man not to panic, because even the 7 emperors would not be able to attack him. Yifen did not expect that they would be able to pass through his troops. We need to look at them. Looking down from his balcony, the emperor heard shouts from the troops to give them the book. Yifen asked this bunch of insects how they even dared to come to him. He flew up, and they all shouted that they needed to be on the alert, because the demon emperor was approaching. As if flying through the bodies of enemies, Yifen stopped and was shouted at to surrender, but the emperor only grinned. He was glad that the rest of the emperors finally came, who demanded the Book of 9 Secrets from him, and they even promised to save his life for it. Suddenly, Yifen turned to the Sword Emperor and told him that he had been recognized as the 8th Emperor, so even if they attacked him all together, they would not win this fight. Why did they come here at all? Seek Def, one of the emperors, with a beard and in a golden robe, asked the demon if he understood what position he was in at all. He is the enemy of the entire Holy Land, so does he really think that there is no one stronger than him? Another emperor said that this book is a relic of the ancient emperor of the Holy Land. Behind him, Zhao Cheng told the master that this would not lead to anything good, because in front of them was the strongest emperor of the Holy Land. Zhuo Yifen grinned. The enemy of the whole Holy Land. How, even being an enemy to everyone, he will destroy them all. The disciple tearfully asked the master to just give up, because it was time to die. And then the demon emperor abruptly turned around and suddenly realized that his disciple was a traitor. He leaked all the information about the location of the Book of 9 Secrets. He raised Zhao Cheng, taught him everything, so why did he betray him? The disciple behind his back replied that even if he was his teacher, he should not have used that book alone. Having received the power, he would forget about the disciple in the blink of an eye. He didn't even let him look at her, as if Zhao Cheng was a complete stranger to him. The emperor was perplexed. Did the disciple betray him just because of that? But he replied that, whatever it was, he could think about him whatever he wanted. But now that there was no way for the emperor to escape, he should think about what he had taught him. The demon emperor had raised Zhao Cheng since childhood, but he thought so narrowly that there was no room for trust in his heart. Then the demon emperor laughed and said that now he would destroy this book with him, so that no one would get it at all. The other 7 emperors suddenly realized that Yifen was going to self-destruct. In the next second, the emperor lit up with a bright yellow flash, and his soul seemed to fly away from his body. There were dead bodies lying on the ground, in the forest, among the trees. The young guy seemed to be struck by lightning and he opened his eyes. The soul of the emperor moved into the body of a young man. He began to examine him, arms, legs. The emperor did not expect that he would be reborn in the body of this boy. Suddenly, the guy turns around at the noise from behind the bushes, from where fierce wolves come out. The boy shouts at them to get away, and in response the animals only growl. Birds from the trees quickly darted into the sky while the predators were getting away. Not far away, a man was sitting on the ground and leaning against a tree. He asked Zhuo Fan to help him. The guy didn't know the man, but it was clear that the owner of the new body definitely knew him. This man's strength is at the 2nd level, which was nice because it can be used. Zhuo Fan went to the man in order to absorb his strength. He put his hand to the man's head and he realized that it wasn't Zhuo Fan at all. So who is he then? The kid replied that he was absolutely right. He was not Zhuo Fan. He is the demon emperor Zhuo Yifen. In the next moment, there was a withering touch. The man shouted to the whole forest. Later, when it was already light, the boy sat on the grass and reasoned that in the Book of 9 Mysteries it is written that the withering touch is the highest demonic technique that sucks the soul and strength of the victim to become stronger. However, the practitioner must train hard to use such a technique without harm to his health. Therefore, first you need to form dark energy in the body and then completely absorb it. Only one skeleton and a skull remained of the man. It's already morning. The guy didn't think that absorbing the soul of that man would take so long. Suddenly his hand began to sparkle and the guy shot lightning into a large stone, which also began to glow like everything around. The guy made a promise to the Sword Emperor and Zhao Cheng that he would be back soon, and when he returns to the Holy Land, it will be the end for all of them. The guy jumped very high and noted that the new body had risen from 0 to the 5th level. It looks like it will take him a long time before he can return to any land. The guy sat down on a tree branch and heard a strange sound. A bunch of people gathered below, arguing among themselves. A dark-haired man in uniform, whose name was Pan Tongling, the head of the guards of the Luo family, held a sword in front of him and told the Sun family that they were traitors because they had been deceived. The rival, Sun Guangjia, the butler of the Luo family, said that in memory of the fact that they worked together all these years, he warns Pan to give up better. The girl who stood next to Pan Tonglen replied to the man that the dragon's paw is a spiritual martial art of the Luo family, which has been passed down from generation to generation, and they will never give it up, even if they die. A little boy who was standing nearby told his sister not to try to stop him, because he would kill these traitors. All this time, Zhuo was sitting in a tree and watching the exchange. It's not surprising that the Luo family has problems. It is obvious that they are dealing with bandits. Something stirred up inside and the guy could not understand what kind of relationship he was connected with this family. He'd better get out of there as soon as possible. Quickly jumping down from the tree, the boy did not understand what was happening. His heart suddenly ached with a dull pain and Zhuo squatted down. What happened? Is this really the result of using his techniques? So his magic doesn't fit. Does this mean that this body is not suitable for cultivation? Is this child's body just useless trash? His heartbeat is stable, meridians are normal, and breathing is fine. In general, everything is fine. So what's wrong with him then? Suddenly the guy abruptly opened his eyes and climbed back up the tree. Of course, right after he saw Mrs. Luo's face, the pain in his heart disappeared. On the other hand, when he leaves her, the chest starts to hurt a lot again. The boy realized that it was all the magic of the heart. If a practitioner is exposed to the magic of the heart, then it is like a curse. The magic of the heart does not allow the practitioner to act freely, and if he resists, then only death awaits him. First you need to synchronize your memory with the memory of this boy, and see why this heart magic works. The boy's memories flooded in like an avalanche. His father sacrificed himself for the 7 Lo, and now they are his family. In the next memory, the mistress protected the boy from the servant and shouted that Zhuo Fan should not be offended because he was part of their family. Then Uncle Pan called the boy stupid and too small to fight. He will definitely teach him everything, but later when he grows up. The kid promised then that he would work hard and eventually become the strongest, and then he would be able to protect his mistress and the entire Luo family. Then someone shouted about the approach of bandits, that it was necessary to protect the mistress and the master, that it was necessary to kill everyone and not let anyone escape. They shouted that the head of the Luo family was dead. Then Xiao Tan, barely alive, lay on the lap of his mistress, who begged him to stay conscious. Through the pain and blood, the boy asked her to run away with the young gentleman as soon as possible. He really hates himself for being such a weakling because he couldn't protect the Luo family. Zhuo Yifan realized that this kid cherished this family and his mistress very much. He wanted this family to flourish, and as long as he resisted this will, the magic of the heart would slowly kill him. Damn, does this mean that the demon emperor should remain a servant for the rest of his days? It's better to die than to be like this all my life. He's the demon emperor of the Holy Land, and now he has to serve such a small family. Out of frustration, the guy hit a tree with his fist and all the birds that were sitting on it soared into the air, and thereby attracted attention to himself. A bunch of people turned around at the noise. The lady thought that help had arrived, but Pan refuted the guesses. It can't be, because there's no one left anymore. Zhuo Fan came out of the shade of the dense trees and told his mistress to give up this spiritual technique. What's wrong with giving it away? He doesn't want her to die because it would be a huge loss for the entire Luo family. The mistress was surprised when she saw the guy. She thought he was dead, didn't she? The guy asked her, isn't it wonderful that he was able to survive? Zhuo Yifan noticed that he was the weakest among all the bandits at the 6th level. Sun asked who he was and what he was doing here. Perhaps 15 years of slavery had driven him mad. Everyone standing nearby laughed. The guy realized that Sun Guangjia has a much larger volume of AI than others. And now, with his current strength, this will be a life and death battle. The Luo family stood and thought that this guy needed to be taught discipline, and Pan got angry at all. This kid is really a fool. Another said that the kid is scared, that's why he's talking this nonsense. Meanwhile, Zhuo Fan continued to talk about how they were already on the edge of the abyss. So why do they need to protect this technique? The girl screamed at him and asked him not to talk nonsense. He must get out of this place immediately. Sun laughed angrily from the kindness of the mistress, who even now is trying to protect her faithful servant. Then the girl asked if he would let the guy go. He just laughed and said that it was not possible. First the mistress has to kill this stupid child and then everyone else. Loyal subject Sunya understood the order and began to carry it out. Zhuo Yifan realized that the jock is at the 7th level and he must defeat him at all costs. He only has one chance. The bully swung at the guy and shouted to him that he was already dead. The guy was able to restrain the sword that flew at him and restrained this attack. Everyone around was very surprised by this. The guy has to figure out what to do next, and with his eyes he found the mistress. He has to protect her and her little brother, but it's so troublesome. Zhuo just walked up to the girl and took her and her brother in his arms, like a sack of potatoes, and the next second he just ran away. Sun ordered his men to hurry up and catch up with the boy while the defeated fighter was lying on the ground and moaning in pain. Some guy ordered his men to stop Sun's gang because they can't be allowed to pursue their mistress. At this time, the mustachioed Sun Guangjia got angry because some damned boy dared to destroy his grandiose plan. Therefore, he would not let him escape so easily, and when he catches the guy, he will break all his bones and only then let the boy die. The mistress screamed and screamed for the guy to finally let her go. She can't leave her comrades in trouble. They urgently need to go back. Suddenly, the kid shouted to this despicable slave to finally let his sister go. Tired of listening to these screams, Zhuo threw the girl to the ground. She kept insisting they should go back because they can't let the guards of the Luo family lose their lives because of them. Leaving, the young man only said that if she wanted to go, then let her go already. But will she be able to defeat these bandits when she returns to the battlefield? Zhuo was still carrying the boy in his arms. The enemies are already looking for them. If they want to die, then let them fool around, let them go to the meeting then. The boy continued to swear at the cursed slave. And how dare he talk to his master? He must immediately put the boy on the ground so that he and his sister could return back. Zhuo Fan called the little one a stinker and said that if he didn't shut up right now, he would give the boy a kick in the ass. In response, only wild yelling and swearing. But the guy suddenly smiled and the boy froze in disbelief. Then he threw it to his sister, who said it was too much. The guy replied that it was only a small punishment and it was much better than the young gentleman dying in her arms. And then the guy asked her if there was a shelter nearby. The girl humbly replied that there were several farms on the square, but there was no shelter there. There is a misty forest on the west side of Black Wind Mountain, and most likely the bandits don't know that area. The guy suggested she just go there and ask the girl to keep her brother in check. Looking after the guy, the girl promised herself that she would definitely punish him as soon as everything was over. Walking to the mountain, she told the girl that there was a misty forest in front of them. The fog appeared there many years ago and fewer people can enter and exit there. Her father had told her that the head of Black Wind Mountain was very strong, no weaker than himself. But for decades, both sides have done nothing and she does not know why now the bandits suddenly attacked them so suddenly. The guy only laughed maliciously in response and said that this was a good place. The girl told Zhuo Fan to leave with her brother while she distracted the attention of the bandits. But the guy refuses such a tempting offer. He doesn't know the local area, and if she doesn't go with him, then there's no way he can take care of her brother. And if she leaves, he will immediately kill this child. The kid got angry again. But Fan didn't seem to notice it and continued to say that if they left now, it would still be certain death. They have to take care of their lives, which were saved by their own people, because their lives are very valuable. They had better destroy Sun Guangjia and his squad immediately. The girl screamed and asked if the guy was crazy. Does he really think he can beat them so easily? After all, Sun has a huge stock of AI, and 4 of his best experts are with him. What kind of nonsense is this despicable slave talking at all? The boy is in his repertoire. The girl said that even if he teamed up with Pan Tonglen, they were not their opponents. What then can the guy do in this situation? The brunette replied that that pile of garbage is nothing compared to him. However, he and his brother can listen to his plan or surrender to the bandits. The choice is only for them. Before the bandits caught up with them, the guy asked the girl for a moonstone, because the last hope of the Luo family is in her hands. Then the girl took off a green ring from her finger and threw it to the guy, not forgetting to mention that it was an ancient family heirloom. And if he lies to her, then the girl will not let him just get away with it. Zhuo Fan advised her not to take everything to heart and said he would be back soon. While he was walking deep into the forest, the young master informed his sister that this slave had become very arrogant, and she should teach him a lesson. The mistress replied to Yunhai that although this slave does not respect them, he helped them. And it's much better than those who are silent and harming, and they should be grateful to the guy. The girl did not understand what was going on with Zhuo Fan. He seemed to have changed. At this time, the guy was walking in the woods and saying something. Qinglong is the spirit of the east, Beiyu is the spirit of the west, Juk is the spirit of the south, and Xuanwu is the spirit of the north. Oh, the heavenly unicorn that aspires to the empty sky. There is a huge number of natural objects to get off, from which you can create a huge array. The guy will turn this place into a second Tian mountain. Zhuo made strange hand movements and ordered the 9 ghost gates to open. Then a quartet of evil spirits will appear and the ring will activate. Something strange began to happen around and the lady called her brother to see it. The forest was enveloped in a purple vortex and in the next moment the fog disappeared. Zhuo Fan appeared behind them unnoticed and the girl asked him what was going on and did he do it all now. The brunette only calmed her down because there is no need to fuss once again. He ordered the gentleman to follow him because he would teach the girl magic shackles and other spells, and when the bandits were here she would be able to twist them and kill them. The girl was in shock. Is there a way to defeat them? The array placement method is something more valuable than martial arts in this world. The guy walked ahead along the path while the girl looked at the arrays. This first level array is the secret art of the Eisenman family. The other array also has hundreds of thousands of linjai that cannot be measured in price. The guy was just a servant, but he was able to form an array so easily. She was about to ask how he did it all, but the guy interrupted her and told her not to worry. He has set a limit and now he will teach her. You just need to squeeze until they die. At that time, in another part of the forest, the speakers informed Sun that the refugees had entered the Misty Forest. Pan Tongling, who was tied up, started shouting at him to kill him right now, otherwise he would avenge those who died. The mustachioed man said that if he kept the man captive, his mistress would do whatever he asked. And since they are hiding in the forest, they need a guide who knows the terrain of the Misty Forest well. And that's why Pan will be a guide, because the kind heart of his mistress will not let him die. Pan swore that Sun couldn't just use him to threaten his mistress. Suddenly everyone noticed that someone was sitting under the tree. Sun recognized the guy Zhuo, who killed his fat man. Zhuo greeted me nicely and said that he had been waiting for everyone already, and he is sitting on the ground in a relaxed position. Sun replied to the guy that he must be very brave to meet him face to face, and ordered his men to kill the guy as soon as possible. Zhuo Fan only grinned at this. Zhuo Fan was attacked with a knife in the hope of killing the guy. These two gentlemen are now paralyzed and are in his hands. And so, when the sword was almost at the guy's neck, Sun suddenly ordered to stop. Is what the guy said really true? Is it true that the guy has them in captivity? The man was very doubtful. Then the guy offered Sun Guanjia to make a deal. Hearing these words, the mustachioed man reluctantly became interested. Zhuo said that he was handing over 2 people to them, and in return they should guarantee his safety. The bandits were surprised. Then Sun asked the boy why he betrayed the Luo family, to which he received only laughter and a counter question in response. He's also very curious. The mustachioed man only chuckled in response. Zhuo Fan said that people shouldn't dig their own grave. Now that the Luo family has been defeated, he won't be able to rebuild the whole family alone. Therefore, he uses the lives of 2 people in exchange for his own. It's common sense, so why should he seek death? Now the girl and her younger brother are at one end of the thread. However, there are a lot of forks along the way and only one Zhuo Fan will be able to distinguish them. Sun Guanjia appreciated the guy's idea to use a thread as a safety net. Thanks to this, they will easily find the lady and her brother and will also be able to find their way back from the Misty Forest. It's also interesting. In the end, after thinking everything over carefully, the man accepts Zhuo Fan's offer and hopes very much that the guy will not deceive him. He only assured that he was very honest with the man. The mustachioed man replied that he had no confidence in the guy, and then he laughed out loud. The boy, too. It's time to go to work, so it's time for the brunette to show the way. Curses and name-calling rained down after the guy, because he betrayed his master. People believed him, and he betrayed them so easily. And it's also Sun Guanjia, just a fucking bastard. Pan shouted that even if he died, he would curse them all his life. Zhuo Fan, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped abruptly, which aroused Sun's suspicion. Did they really come to the very place where the guy was leading him? The young man turned around a little and said that he had brought the man to the road of Longquin to kill him. The man instantly got angry and shouted words to the guy to die. He stretched out his hand to him, but the brunette seemed to have disappeared. Sun ordered his men to quickly find their way back. But the red thread was cut, and besides, Pan Tongling was also missing. Sun Guanjia was terribly angry that everything did not go according to plan. And how did this guy just dare to deceive him? Did he really think that this Misty Forest could stop him? Let him just wait, and the man will kill him. The sky seemed to light up in red and the laughter of the guy who mocked the man sounded around. After all, he would never have a chance to kill Zhuo again. The man did not understand why the fog suddenly turned red and what happened at all. He shouted to his men to be on the alert and look around carefully. But then he turned back and saw only emptiness behind him. Where did all his people go? They all suddenly disappeared, as if they had never been there. Isn't that an array? At this time, Zhuo Fan returned to the girl who was sitting inside the glowing circle. She informed the guy that everything was under control and everyone from the guards had been rescued, including Pan Tongling. And then the girl got up and asked what he was going to do next. The young man leaned towards her and replied that his next step was to help her and her younger brother. He abruptly grabbed her wrist and ordered her not to move, hugging her slightly from behind. He whispered in her ear to keep her still and concentrate. Zhuo controlled her hand and pressed it to the ground, and the next moment she felt an incredible force. And then the guy ordered her to kill people. The circle suddenly became bigger and brighter, and some black spirits flew from the sky at the bandits. They pierced the chest of their victims, one after another. And when one of the spirits flew at Sun, he tried to grab him with his hand. But the pain was so hellish that the man fell to the ground and howled in pain. His eyes suddenly turned red, and he was just wondering who Zhuo Fan really was. At this time, the guy was standing in the shade of the trees and said rather to the void that he was going to hell, and asked his king there. While Sun Guanjia was still trying to figure out who the guy really was, Zhuo Fan was summoning evil spirits to himself. In the end, he fiercely ordered, and from a powerful blow of force, the girl was thrown back a little. Did the guy lose control of his array? The guy performed a great demonic transformation while the black spirits circled and circled over his head. With each spirit, he reached more and more power levels, and eventually reached the peak level of the base of the body. His AI was almost at zero due to the use of this powerful technique. And the more such breakthroughs there are in the future, the more valuable his achievements will become. When everything calmed down a little later, the guy ordered himself to get ready. This time, the pulse during the breakthrough has become much more stable and the energy is 3 times more than with a normal level rise. Zhuo Fan raised his hand up and caught the rays of the sun that broke through the thick crown of the tree. Now that he has broken through, he definitely needs to practice martial arts. His mistress called him behind his back and asked where he had been. And why did the array suddenly get out of control? The young master noticed that the fog had disappeared. Zhuo Fan replied that most likely his disappearance was due to the fact that Linshan was too small, and that's why the array became unstable, and then completely out of control. The guy checked, and can say with certainty that Li Sunyi and his men are dead, and fortunately they were not able to escape. The girl suddenly looked to the side and saw that Pan Tongling was wildly angry. For a while, he and Zhuo Fan looked into each other's eyes. But then Pan suddenly fell to his knees and asked the guy for forgiveness for having dared to insult him for his act before. All because the man did not know that the guy was preparing a trap for those bandits. And if the guy wants to hit him, then let him do it and the man will not resist. Even if Zhuo wants to take his life, he won't resist it. Zhuo Yifan noticed that this Pan Tongling is very loyal. If only Zhao Cheng had such loyalty, then he wouldn't have got into this strange situation. The guy leaned over to Pan Tongling and said that he was the head of the Luo family's security, and the guy was just a servant. So how dare he punish a man? Besides, they wouldn't have been able to win without the lady's help. Hearing this, Pan jumped up and stared at the blonde with shock. He asked her if it was true, and having received a positive response, the man raised his head to him and began to ask for the blessing of the gods for the Luo family. And now they have the power of brothers Yuo. The dawn of the Luo family is definitely close. The guy asked the mistress what their new plan was, since now nothing threatens them. Pan said that they had originally planned to take the lady to Feng City, to the Kai family. The man decided that the guy should know that the son of the head of the Kai family is marrying their mistress. The guy thought about it. The Kai family is one of the largest families in Feng City, and if they hand over Lady Luo to them, then perhaps the magic on his heart will disappear, and then he will finally be free. The guy got ready and said it was time for them to move out to the Kai family. The guy promised that he would definitely come back. The servant was kneeling in the middle of the path that led to the throne on which the man was sitting. Torches were burning all around. The atmosphere was basement and murderous. The man who was sitting with his elbows on his knees asked the servant if Sun Guanjia had coped with his task. The servant began to report to Mr. Shaijai that Sun Guanjia had failed the task, and now a group of people is in Feng City. The gray-haired man laughed and ordered her to continue watching the Lord and her guards. The servant obeyed and ran away from the oppressive atmosphere. Meanwhile, Mr. Shaijai got up from his throne and walked over to the curtain, pushing it aside. Behind the curtain lay the master, an old man with a long gray beard and a bald head. His eyes were open, but he was lying like a corpse. The gray-haired man approached the master and asked him not to worry, because very soon he would meet his old friend. Only he has to wait until he gets the dragon's paw, and then the man will reunite the old man with his brothers. The master continued to lie quite still, and only his eyeballs seemed to turn red. Malicious laughter rang out all around. 5 days later, the group arrived in Feng City. It was very beautiful around, the river was flowing, there were people everywhere. The girl called her brother Linhai and told him to look around. Standing slightly behind the lady and the younger master, Pan asked Zhuo-fan how he felt, because he had never been to Feng City. The guy thought to himself that this lousy town was no different from an ordinary village, but in fact he just ignored the man's question and asked if they were going to the Kai family. The blonde turned back and said that they could not go to them all at once, and therefore only she and her brother would go first, and then they would come for them. Pan agreed that there was not much way out, so they would not bother them. And the guy a little behind just chuckled and said that it was all very troublesome. Then Pan Tongling turned to him and said that if they went now, the Kai family would think they were some kind of ignoramuses. So, they can go to the hotel for now and have a good rest there. Zhao decided to leave everyone and told the guys to go first, and then they would all meet together on the spot. But first he needs to walk around the city. The boy shouted to Zhuo, as always calling him a despicable slave, that he had come to this city only thanks to his older sister. And so he has to wait for his future son-in-law to come here, and then Zhuo will have to speak to him with due respect. Otherwise he will simply teach him a lesson. The guy kicked the boy in the back and said that while he was waiting for his son-in-law, the guy would teach the scoundrel a lesson right now. The boy fell to the ground with all his strength, and his sister immediately rushed to pity him. She turned to the servant and asked why he was acting like a child. The brunette replied that her brother was the first to start all this. They all just have to calm down, and if they suddenly decide that the guy is unpleasant to them, then they should just get rid of him. The girl just gasped noisily and looked after the departing guy. Pan followed the brunette and told him that no matter how much the boy infuriated him, he was still his master. How dare he kick him? Zhuo-fan rudely asked the man to shut up and continued on his way. Suddenly I heard some arguments nearby. A long-haired girl stood near the master's shop and told him that although the seller was a master of jade, he was selling a fake. The man was outraged. Does this girl even have the slightest proof that the jade is a fake? It's pure jade. He had to work very hard to get it. The girl agreed that she is not very well versed in stones, but she has seen real jade with her own eyes and she is absolutely sure that the man is selling a fake. The salesman laughed. She's only seen real jade once, and she's already starting to say that she can distinguish real jade from a fake. Well, this little girl is talking nonsense. The brunette continued to remain calm. She repeated again that she had actually seen a real jade and would be able to distinguish it from a fake. Then the men rudely asked her to hurry up and get away from his shop and not get into someone else's business. Suddenly, Zhuo-fan got into an argument and told the man that his jade was really a fake, and he has a way to prove it. The man got angry and started shouting where this guy came from and why he says his stones are fake, and how is he going to prove it at all. It seems to a man that the guy is just talking some nonsense. All his jade is real. The brunette said that if the seller does not believe him, then why not check it then? A little later, curious people gathered around the table, on which there were bowls of water. The guy explained that the liquid in the bowl, which everyone present can make, is sulfur and rock sediment. And if jade is soaked in this liquid, then they will be able to find out whether it is real jade or not. The seller agreed to try. He was determined to win this argument. A man throws a pebble into the sulfur and red particles depart from it. The man shouted in shock how this could happen at all and why. The liquid in the bowl turned bright scarlet, began to boil and bubble. Zhuo-fan asked onlookers not to be surprised, because this piece of jade was originally a fake, and that's why it started to fade as soon as it hit the water. The guy asked the man to admit that the lady was absolutely right from the very beginning. The seller was swearing, and the lady said that this fake jade is only equal to 3 spiritual stones. Suddenly a stone hit the back of the man's head and he furiously turned back. Who dared to do such a thing at all? It turned out that they were people. They attacked the man like vultures and started throwing stones at him, demanding to return their money for fake stones. The man cursed and blamed the damn kid for everything. And while he was being crushed by a crowd of people, he promised to get to the brunette and definitely take revenge. The girl standing a little behind Zhuo said that the young master was really very good, and she herself knew that the stone was not real, but she simply could not prove it. Zhuo replied that he also felt something similar, and then asked the girl if she really wanted to buy jade. After all, it was worth 3 whole spiritual stones. The brunette replied negatively and said that she only wanted to show people to which liar they give their money. After all, the true price of such jade is absolutely nothing. And then the girl went in the other direction altogether. Pan Tongling said she was very strange. Meanwhile, Zhuo thought that the lady's eyes were very poisonous, but fortunately for the guy, he has enough experience to resist them. The brunette abruptly turned to Lao Pan and ordered him to urgently return to the hotel and bring the guy 10 spiritual stones, because the guy has a very important case. The man was not happy with such an order, but after a while he shed tears for the money. Zhuo Fan went to work alone and walked between the buildings where the old man from the shop was waiting for him behind a tree. The man came around the corner and called out to the guy, and for some reason he called him boss and said he was looking for him. The man was surprised. Is this guy not afraid of him at all? The boy told him that he wanted to look at the jade that the man had sold before and then buy it for 10 spiritual stones. The old man's eyes lit up from such a sum, but for some reason he suspected something was wrong. The guy knows that the stone is not real, so why does he want to spend as many as 10 spiritual stones to buy it? That lady from the market just said that it costs only 3 spiritual stones. The guy replied that even if it wasn't jade, it would be very useful to him. Maybe he can resell it at a higher price. The man said he now understands why the guy wants to buy the stone. All this certainly sounds tempting, but does the guy even know how much the man lost because of him? He is insulted to the depths of his soul, and his honor is trampled on. Does the kid really think he can get away with it so easily? 10 spiritual stones is too little compensation for everything that happened. Then Zhuo exhaled and asked how much the man wanted, and he replied that he wanted his life. At this moment, the seller's men jumped sharply from around the corners, holding swords in their hands. Zhuo Fan continued to stand calmly, not even blinking an eye. He really needs this deal because there are no ulterior motives. The old man shouted that it was all complete nonsense. Didn't he want to ruin his business? Then the guy has to pay for it. He must die. Then the brunette realized that the deal would not take place after all. The man ordered his men to kill the guy immediately, but everything happened so quickly that all the swords fell, and the man was now standing with red eyes and pointed into the void. He wants to kill the guy, but now he has only found his own stupid death, that he just walked past an old man who fell to the ground and grinned. After a while, the guy was already in some building and asked Lao Pan to guard the door and not let anyone inside. Then he closed the other side and stood in front of the table, where he put the fake jade that was purple. He raised his hand over the stone and energy began to radiate from it. And then everything began to sparkle, and the young man realized that he was not mistaken after all. It was fairy blood. Fairy blood, as a rule, is extremely rare, accumulating tens of thousands of types of pure blood, absorbing the aura of heaven and earth, illuminating the essence of the sun and moon. Fairy blood has been formed for more than 10,000 years. The yin and yang magic stone is an incredibly rare treasure, so it was very well appreciated by cultivators. According to the records of the secret book of the 9 mysteries, the blood of fairies can help in the creation of the blood child. And when such a child was born, it was endowed with incredible strength. The blood child can also help the cultivator with his blood. Thanks to her, the practitioner became so dangerous that even cultivators at the level of the emperor did not dare to provoke him. Oh, if in a previous life Zhuo Yifan could create this child. It would be very curious to look at the faces of people from the Holy Land. The guy dropped some of his blood into the stone, and the next second something happened. He had no idea that he would be so lucky. He's just so damn lucky. The stone began to vibrate. It was already dark outside the window, but the guy continued to stay behind the closed door. Sweat was already dripping profusely from his face, but he didn't care about it at all. He thought that if someone wanted to cultivate the blood child technique, then he should drop his blood on it. And until his spirit gets stronger, you need to mix your blood with the blood of the child until you feel his heartbeat. The blood from his hand kept dripping, and it was bad because the guy had lost too much blood. Zhuo Fan also started to feel dizzy. Will he now be able to use fairy blood to create a blood child? He only has one try, and if he gives up now, there won't be another chance. The next second, Zhuo just started coughing up blood, which wasn't very good. If he continues, then his life will be in danger. Should he give it up? If his soul disappeared, would this fairy blood mean anything? The guy had flashbacks of the emperors ordering Yifan to surrender. They demanded to give them the Book of the 9 Mysteries so that they would keep him alive. They said that this book is a relic of the ancient emperor of the Holy Land. Aren't these emperors just villains who only see benefits for themselves? And yet this disciple turned out to be a traitor. They all wanted Zhuo to die, but he's not going to die. To hell with everything. Who is he anyway? He's the magic emperor, the demon emperor, and everything they took from him, he will try to return. Gathering all his strength after the strange monologue, the guy focused on the blood of fairies. The pebble suddenly caught fire, and the guy couldn't believe that it finally happened. Now the divine level technique was finally mastered and Zhuo took the stone in his hand. He raised his head up, spread his arms to the sides and shouted joyfully. He was finally able to recreate the blood child. However, it was unexpected. Everything turned out to be much simpler than Zhuo imagined. And now that he has a blood child, the martial arts he will study next have already been determined. Some time passed, and morning came. Pan was sitting tired, and got up when Zhuo Fan finally came out of the door. The man asked if the guy had finished all his business. Kai Fu came to remind them. Zhuo asked Lao Pan if he had been guarding this door for 10 days. The man replied that he didn't want anyone to bother him. Then the guy sincerely thanked the man and said that he had done a great job. Pan asked if the boy had any difficulties and said that they needed to hurry up, because they could not let the young lady and master wait so long. The guy did not understand why Pan did not ask questions about what he had been doing all 10 days behind these closed doors. And then the man simply replied that it was none of his business, so he didn't ask. He doesn't want to know anything, and the guy has to tell everything himself when he's ready. They need to hurry to the mistress because they are already waiting. Zhuo Fan pursed his lips and was surprised at such unconditional trust, because he had never experienced such a thing in his life. After a while, they came to a posh estate, expected for one of the best families in Feng City. Suddenly, they were stopped by security and asked who they were and how dare they enter the Kai family residence. Pan, standing next to Zhuo, quickly introduced himself as a security guard of the Luo family, and then introduced the guy himself, saying that he was the butler of the Luo family, Zhuo Fan. The young lady of their family is a guest on this estate. Zhuo wondered to himself, when did he become the butler of the Luo family? Pan Tongling slightly bent down to the brunette and said in his ear that a few days ago people from the Kai family came and said that he was now the butler of the Luo family. Apparently, that was how the lady introduced him. And then Pan congratulated the guy on his new title. Zhuo wondered how he, the great demon emperor, could be an ordinary butler of such a small family. However, the Kai family guards don't look very friendly. Meanwhile, the guards examine the uninvited guests from head to toe. And again, people from the Luo family. 2 liars have already come, eating the Kai family. Well, let them pass. At this point, Pan Tongling suddenly became angry. Yes, how dare they say that at all? The man was suddenly dragged back, and Zhuo realized that what is the attitude of subordinates, then such is their masters, and most likely they treat the mistress the same way. So, this Kai family can't be trusted in any way. As they approached the small house with a thatched roof, Pan Tongling continued to resent the guards' treatment of their mistress and young master. It's so cruel. They didn't even show the slightest hospitality. Then Zhuo Fan said that they were treating their mistress and master like some kind of trash, nothing more. Then they entered this thatched house, which turned out to be even worse inside, shabby walls with cracks, and nothing but a bed. A sad young gentleman was sitting alone on this very bed. He did not expect to see these two here at all, and rushed into the arms of Pan Tongling, who began to apologize to the boy for being too late. Standing to the side, Zhuo Fan asked the kid what about his sister. Where is she anyway? Then the boy dejectedly replied that his sister had gone in search of a groom. The head of the Kai family asked her to terminate the marriage contract. The attitude of these people and what they are asking for. It's like an insult. Zhuo Fan grabbed the boy by the arm and dragged him to the exit so that he would take him to the mistress. And how did the Kai family dare to do this? At this time, the young lady was standing in the courtyard, insanely beautiful, with a pond and a beautiful gazebo, and watched her so-called fiancé, Xiao Tingji, who was talking to another girl. The blonde called out to him, and when the guy turned around, he told Luo Yunshin that he had nothing more to do with her from that moment on. In his eyes, from now on, he sees only the beautiful Yu Fei. The latter stood side by side and said with a grin that time flies very fast, and brother Xiao has not loved Luo for a long time. The person he likes right now is standing right in front of her. The girl laughed mirthlessly and suddenly yelled at the newlywed. She doesn't expect Tingji to break off the engagement. However, she hopes that he will be able to convince his uncle, and will remember the relationship of their families in the past. At least let him help the Luo family. The guy turned around and walked away, throwing in the last that her problems in no way concern him. Luo desperately shouted after them that they had grown up together. Was it so difficult for him to help her family? She's begging, isn't she? Then suddenly Sister Yu Fei came up and slapped a juicy slap in the face of the blonde. She shouted at Luo to stay away from Kai Xiao Ting because he now belongs to her. And then she turned her head to the guy himself and said that he should stay away from this woman, and if she saw him with her at least once, she would never forgive it. The young man asked Yufei to calm down, because in his heart only she and the other girls are just garbage in his eyes. The girl hesitated for the sake of appearance, but eventually cooled her ardor a little. At this time, the blonde was frantically looking for ways out. What should she do now? Wiping hot tears from her cheeks, the girl screamed for help. However, it was only in her head, and therefore no one could hear her. The next second, Zhuo Fan ran past her and slapped both Kai Xiao Ting and Yufei on the cheeks with gusto. The victims asked who he was in general, and in response they heard that they were non-entities. How dare they contact Mrs. Luo? Xiao Ting realized that the guy who came was about the same age as him. However, his speed is simply incredible. They are both considered geniuses, but neither of them could react in time. This guy even managed to give them 2 slaps in the face. How could he have reached such a level? At this time, Zhuo was thinking that his demonic heart had already seen, as if, all the sufferings of this world. So why does he suffer so much because this little girl is being bullied? Despite all this, the guy has no reason to feel pain in his heart. These feelings are connected only with the former owner of this body. Damn heart magic. It looks like Zhuo will have to deal with the Luo family for a very long time. The guy approached the blonde and gently wiped the tears from her cheek and then took her to the exit from the garden. Yufei shouted after them and asked if they didn't think they could leave so easily after this guy hit them. Does Luo Yunchen think that she can just walk away from here? The blonde turned around and asked her rival what she needed. The brunette said that everything is very simple. She wants the 2 of them to kneel and bow to them 3 times. And then, so be it, she will let them go. Especially that guy. The blonde said that Yu was asking too much, and then Kai shouted so that Lo would not disgrace herself. If they don't get down on their knees, then let them not expect to be able to leave here. Lo must remember that she is not alone. She shouldn't let her brother lose his life. Then Pan Tongling intervened and said that this was too much. But the blonde just hugged her younger brother and sadly said that they all need to get down on their knees. This state of affairs did not suit Zhuo Fan. His eyes became furious, and then he rushed at Yufei and Kai Xiao Ting. He poked them in the face with his hand and both fell back with all their strength. The girl had blood on her forehead, and she looked so angry that it might seem as if she was about to explode. Now, it turned out that these 2 misunderstandings were kneeling in front of him, and not the other way around. Zhuo looked down on them, and damn him, Yu screamed that even if they all begged her to let them go, she wouldn't do it. And for that, she got hit in the face again. This time with a shoe. Pan and the young gentleman stood aside and looked at all this with their mouths open, and the boy was completely happy with this arrangement. Zhuo Fan asked if they wanted him to kneel. Do they really think they deserve it? Suddenly, an angry question was heard from behind about who dared to disturb the Kai family. Everyone turned around and saw a long-haired and mustachioed man rushing towards them at full speed. The beaten junior Kai was glad that his father had finally come. Zhuo Fan looked the man up and down with his unreadable gaze. Is this the head of the Kai family? The younger one started snitching, just like a little kid. He said that this arrogant guy was giving him nothing but trouble. Then Zhuo suddenly blurted out to the man that he had a level 8 skeleton tempering. And Kai Sr. couldn't understand how this boy could know his cultivation level just at a glance. He told Zhou that he had a great eye, but still, who is he? The brunette replied that he was the butler of the Luo family. The man recently heard that the Luo family was rehiring a new butler, but he never expected that he would be so young. Plus, this guy turned out to be very mysterious, and therefore, a man should not provoke people unknown to him. But fortunately, now the man has connections with whom he has nothing to fear. Yufei suddenly turned to Uncle Kai and said that he should immediately punish that guy and the lady. Then the man turned to her, put his hand on the top of her head and asked her not to worry, because Uncle Kai was already here. And then he called Luo Yunchen and said that he had been kind enough to her and her younger brother, and if she didn't repay the debt, she would only create more problems for the man. And then Zhuo Fan got into the conversation, saying that it looks like the head of the Kai family, at his age, can still bully a little girl. And if there is anything else he wants to say, then let him tell the guy and not the young lady. And let him not pretend that he treats them well. They can continue to chat, but let them not forget about the problem with the marriage contract. Then Mustache agreed, because these guys create a lot of problems and the old man will not be very merciful. Now they will quickly understand everything. The man gave the guy a choice, fight or die. He feels the difference in strength. Pan said that the man's strength is at the 8th level of skeleton hardening, and it's just suicide. The girl begged her uncle to spare her younger brother, Yunhai, because he was not to blame for anything. At this time, Zhuo Fan replied that he would launch the attack first. The man was surprised. How does this boy even dare to attack him first? Kai put his hand forward and attacked the guy in response. But nothing happened because he had not yet managed to gather all his AI for a full-fledged strike. The guy was just lucky that he survived the man's attack. Duel replied that he never believes in luck because he believes only in strength. The man had blood on his hand while Duel was still talking, and besides, he should look at his son, who was trying to cope with the blood from his nose. Seeing this, the man asked Fan what he had done. He replied that he just wanted to show Elder Kai that he could take his son's life at any moment, so the man should be very careful. Sai the elder asked the brunette to stop, and said that he now believes him, because his son was already choking on his own blood. Duel grinned at this and turned to his side, saying that it was time for them to leave here. And finally he told Elder Kai that he gave him his word that if he ignored his warning, Fan would kill his son. When the group disappeared from view, Yu Fei came up to Uncle Kai and asked if he really let everyone go for nothing. The man replied that in the past, this old man was too lazy to release the beasts, but today he allowed the tiger to return to the mountains. If Fan doesn't die as soon as possible, then he will threaten his family in the future. The girl hissed that if Uncle Kai was afraid to touch the boy, then the elders of her family were not afraid of him. And how did this guy just dare to hit her beautiful face? She would let them feel the consequences for insulting a member of the 7 imperial families. When Pantongling, Mrs. Luo and Duo Fan were walking among the houses, the guy asked Luo what she knew about the 7 imperial families. The girl was surprised for a moment. How does the guy even know about this? Only the head of the guard and the young gentleman did not understand what it was about. The girl began to say that they had previously been in Gyunzhuang and had nothing to do with them. But now they live in exile, and if they meet someone from the imperial families, they should avoid them properly, even if it is one of their dogs. Looking at the girl, Pantongling remembered that young Lady Luo was calm even when they encountered the Kai family, but now she looks very worried. The lady went on to say that the Luo and Kai families, no matter how strong they are still considered ordinary families. In the Tianyu Empire, during the founding of the Tianyu Empire, 7 ministers received a special invitation from the emperor, by which they could join the ranks of the imperial family. They have lands and power over other families, and to go against them is to go against the empire. That's what the 7 imperial families are like. Pan asked if there was anyone who could compare with the imperial families in this empire. Lo replied that they were inviolable and no one could do anything with them, and everyone knows about it. Standing behind everyone, Duo Fan asked if the Sun family was part of these families. The mistress did not understand why the guy suddenly asked about it. Then Pan said that if that woman was a member of the imperial family, the young lady would certainly have stopped him when he wanted to hit her. The guy said that the Sun family is related to one of the imperial families. Then the blonde asked him how he knew this. Duo Fan heard that girl, Yu Fei, shouting that they should feel the power of the 7 imperial families. Pan could not understand how such a thing could happen. Really, did they accidentally offend one of the imperial families? Ms. Luo abruptly grabbed the guy by the arm and dragged him towards the garden from where they had just returned, and said that they should immediately apologize to Miss Sun. But Duo pulled his hand out of the strong female grip and said that all this is absolutely useless, and if they go back, then only death will wait for them. Luo Yunchen was dejected by the whole situation. She didn't understand what they should do now. The attention of everyone was attracted by the younger Mr. Luo. He called Duo a brother, which he hadn't done before, and all because it was a matter of honor, because the guy saved them. And now Duo is like a brother to the boy, and he doesn't even mind the guy becoming his son-in-law. So, he has to save them one more time. The angry sister, who was standing a little behind, furiously ordered her brother to shut up so that he wouldn't talk such nonsense. Ignoring the last words, Duo asked if there were any other imperial families in this city, and the girl replied that there was a number 1 treasury in the Kaianlong pavilion. They are strong and very rich. The brunette approached the boy, stroked his head and invited everyone to rest, and tomorrow they will go to that pavilion to form their own alliance there. On the following day, the 4 approached the pavilion, at the entrance to which there were many guards. Everything looked very impressive, as expected from the imperial family. Even their guards looked strong and intimidating. One of them, by the way, stopped the guys and asked what brought them to this place and what their business was here. Then Duo politely asked the guards to inform the pavilion head that the lady of the Luo family really wants to meet him. The guards at this time wondered how this guy dares to talk to them without looking them in the eye. One of them told the guy that he had never heard of any Luo family before, and therefore he saw no reason to let them in, so they had better get away and not come back. The brunette was adamant and said that the man should ask his master, because he has no right to decide everything on his own. The guards were amazed at the impudence of some boy. The guy asked, "Is this how guests are treated in the Kaianlong pavilion? This is very disappointing." A girl came out of the gate who stopped this whole farce. The guards quickly bowed to her, fell to their knees and began to report to their mistress that strangers had come to cause them trouble. Looking at the girl who came out, everyone was shocked because she turned out to be the lady from the market who wanted to buy jade. She told the guards that she heard them talking and therefore ordered not to be rude to the guests. And then she looked at the brunette and said that finally they met. Zhuo thought this was a great chance for him, and he replied that it was unexpected to see Miss right here. The girl said that this lady Lung Nor is just doing some work in this pavilion. And then she asked the young man why the young gentleman came to this place. Then Zhuo Fan politely asked permission to introduce himself. He had heard that the Kaianlong Pavilion was the #1 treasury in the entire empire, and so he was accompanying Lady Luo to sell something. The girl replied that the thing they want to sell should be checked by this lady first, and called them to come inside. When the company entered the gate, the two guards looked at each other in surprise. Did this kid seem to be a friend of the young mistress? No, this cannot be true in any layer. After all, how can a young lady be found in the circles of such a poor man? If those who enter do not meet the requirements, then they can easily pour out of here. And while they are inside, the guards should teach them a lesson, and especially that arrogant kid. For someone like him, he's pretty lucky to have dug up a piece of real jade somewhere. Meanwhile, the lady asked to see their treasures so that the treasury would appreciate them. Zhuo thought to himself that this lady doesn't seem sly, but she is very smart. And the only thing that matters is to decide on a business strategy. Although this lady is an elite, but in front of a guy she is nothing. Meanwhile, the girl laid out a bundle on the table and, if she is not mistaken, then she, standing to the side, Pan Tongling and Ms. Luo recognized the scroll that Zhuo Fan had drawn yesterday. The girl noticed that the mistress looked very serious, looking at him. Meanwhile, the lady rolled up the scroll and asked Mr. Zhuo Fan to name his price. The guy began to flatter Ms. Lung, because she is a real expert, so let her make a kick-out offer for both sides. The lady asked how about 100,000 spirit stones, and Pan and Lady Luo opened their mouths. However, Zhuo asked why only 100,000. Is Miss sure she's not wrong? The guy is not going to sell it at such a low price. The girl frowned. When Zhuo realized that the girl was not honest with him, he offered to stop the deal. However, Miss Lun objected and said that the scroll was just a sketch of a first-level array, and 100,000 spiritual stones were quite enough for that. In addition, it is also hand-drawn. This is not a jade shop where he can bargain. The boy laughed and asked the girl not to lie to him, but rather to quickly return this sketch of the array back to him. Not wanting to lose such a deal, the girl with gritted teeth offered 300,000 spiritual stones, but the guy was not bowed down. She's still not being honest with him. The girl made sure to herself that this sketch is really an array of the first level, but there are many formations in this sketch that the girl has never seen before. However, even if she loses a lot of money, she should definitely get this sketch. The damn boy really suspects her and doesn't want to give up. Emerging from her thoughts, the girl heard that the guy still demanded to return the scroll back. She told Lady Luo that this scroll was worth a maximum of 300,000 spirit stones, and within the empire, only they could buy it for that kind of money. They won't be able to get an offer of this kind anywhere else. The miss was belligerently determined to convince the mistress, since the young master could not. It was her only chance. She came as close to Miss Luo as possible, putting her hand on her cheek and said that this deal with the pavilion was very important. And naturally, Luo will be their VIP guest in the future. The pavilion will always be open to her. The lady was surprised. Wasn't it supported by them? She turned to Zhuo Fan and wanted to say something, but the guy quickly shut her up and turned back to Miss Long. He said that he is the butler of the Luo family, and he is in charge of all the affairs of this family. Therefore, the lady should immediately return his sketch. The brunette replied that unfortunately, he requires too much for such a sketch. She began to assure him about the reputation of the pavilion. The maximum price of this array is 300,000 spiritual stones. The guy got angry and said he thought the lady deliberately didn't want to give them the array, so she really couldn't understand. And then Zhuo asked if the master of this pavilion was here. The girl turned around sharply and asked what it was she could not understand. And then she suddenly appreciated his eyes, but told him not to be too arrogant. The kid apologized but said he wanted to meet the Kaianlong Pavilion master. There was a hot tension between the guy and the girl for a couple of moments, but Miss Lung gave up first and said to wait on the spot, because she would call the master. Standing behind, Ms. Luo asked if they were insulting the Kaianlong Pavilion. After a while, a gray-haired man with a long mustache and a beautiful robe came. It was Shen Yanlongju, who is the pavilion master in this city. As expected from Kai and Long, they have a strong master. This person's cultivation level is higher than that of the head of the Kai family. The difference in strength is very large, and at the moment the guy can't even see the level of his cultivation. The man recognized the young lady from the Luo family, and she also greeted him with a bow. Then the man asked the guy if he was the new butler of the Luo family. And the man said that it was good, because as long as it wasn't an old man, anyone could be the butler. The master had heard that Zhuo doubted Miss Long Nu's abilities. Although the girl has little experience, but she has a unique vision and she is completely confident in it. But the guy still doubts, then the master himself will look at this sketch. Zhuo Fan unfolded the scroll in front of the man, and Long told Uncle Jiu to believe what she said. This first level formation array is worth 300,000 spirit stones. After a while, the master said that he did not expect that the Luo family would have something like this, and the man offered the sum of 1.8 million. Pan Tongling and Ms. Luo were shocked, as was Ms. Lun. The brunette did not bow down and said that it was still too small a sum. The old man understands everything, but this is all he can offer the boy. The blonde suddenly said that they would sell this scroll to the master for 1.8 million. But Zhuo Fan slammed the table and said, if they are unable to pay a higher price, then they should cancel the deal. The brunette did not listen to the warnings of the master and mistress, nor the old man himself. He was stubborn and wanted to get either more or nothing. Tension hung around, and it seemed as if the master wanted to attack, so he said that if he did, he would harm the reputation of the pavilion. The old man asked if he wasn't afraid of him. Kai and Long Pavilion is a very serious family, and therefore a bad deal will lead it to a bad reputation. Zhuo is just a naughty boy, but he bets that the master does not want to harm the reputation of his family. The master suddenly laughed harshly. It was so interesting. The Luo family is supported by a man like Zhuo, and he doesn't need to worry about the revival of the Luo family. The master knows that the guy came to the pavilion only to sell this array. So what is the price of the scroll? The young man replied that the price of this array is 10 million, and the master can pay 1.8 now, and the rest later. Therefore, they will owe low. The old man agreed and said that until this debt was paid, the Kai and Long Pavilion would help them as often as possible. And he left, finally telling Lun to pay them. After a while, the girl came to the master again and asked, if this is not a first level array, then what did they buy at a price of 10 million? She had never seen such an array before. Then the master asked the girl to take another close look at the scroll. The man thinks that this is the only array of this kind that exists in the entire empire. The girl suddenly realized that this was a sketch of an ancient array. The method of creating such an array has long been lost, and such a thing could only be found in ancient books. This ancient array is a priceless treasure that was nowhere near 10 million. The girl did not expect that this sketch is so ancient. The master asked the girl to tell Jai to find 5 strong people to protect the Luo family. They insulted the Sun family yesterday. The brunette wondered why they should protect them, and the old man asked if she still did not understand their intentions. This is how they will repay their debt. Zhuo Fan was sitting in a closed room again when Pan Tongling burst in and shouted that everything was very bad and they were surrounded by the Sun family. The brunette waited for them for a long time. Once he reacted quite calmly. He knew that sooner or later they had to come, it was only a matter of time. Zhuo told the man to call the young lady and master. Pan suddenly said out of the blue that Zhuo is so talented that it gives him courage. A cry was heard outside the walls. The Luo family was asked to come out of their modest shelter. Among the people on the street was Yu Fei. She said that yesterday the Luo were very arrogant and now they have what they have. Ms. Luo, who was standing in front of everyone, said she wanted to know the reason why Ms. Sun was bringing so many people to their residence. The brunette replied that she would never forget what they had done to her at the Kai family residence, and today she would not let the Luo family leave here and would destroy them all. The blonde squinted at Zhuo Fan and realized that as long as he wasn't afraid, everything would be fine. Luo told Lady Sun that her family had been living in Lingcheng for 100 years, and therefore it would not be easy for them to destroy them. The Sun family has only been here for a few decades, so they need to be careful with their words. The brunette got angry and rushed to the attack with the words that she would show the blonde that the chicken would never become a phoenix. Suddenly, her cousin blocked her way, and ignoring her indignation, apologized to Mrs. Luo for his cousin's rudeness and said that they were only here to find their family's butler. He's looking for justice for his cousin, and he's not going to touch the blonde at all. If they hand over this butler, then he promises not to harm anyone. The girl from behind started to get indignant and swear, because they did not agree at all. Wouldn't they destroy them? The cousin replied that if Miss Luo didn't interfere with them, it would be a great opportunity to secure a good future for herself. The blonde said that if they are looking for problems with their butler, it means that they are looking for problems with the whole Lo family. All because the butler is also a member of their family and they will not leave him in trouble. The young man suggests to Miss not to resist, because if she finds out who he is, they will not dare to resist him. His name is Zhang Yuquan and he is a disciple of the Yuming Valley. The girl was in shock. Was one of the 7 imperial families standing in front of her. The brunette came out from behind her cousin and asked, "Is Lo already afraid?" She was so gloating over the girl and was sure that her knees were already shaking with fear. The young lady realized that the Sun family is related to the imperial families, so it is not surprising that even the head of the Kai family treated this girl very respectfully. The blonde touched Zhuo Fan by the sleeve of his jacket, but he came forward and said that he was the butler of the Lo Zhuo Fan family. He suggested to the brunette opposite to finish it as soon as possible, and he offered to fight one-on-one. The opponent replied that, as his cousin had told him, the guy was very arrogant. If he loses to someone like the butler, it will bring unprecedented shame to the Human Valley. The guys rushed to meet DRG Dirk, and after a while, Yuquan was surprised that the guy could at least do something. Such a strong AI pressure, as if the guy is some kind of demon. The blonde asked her butler if he was okay, but he was too busy with his opponent. The cousin was surprised that the guy was not afraid of him. Moreover, it seems that he really likes everything that is happening. Who is he really? Zhuo Fan attacked quickly, which was not good for the opponent. Everything was sparkling around. Miss Sun shouted to her brother to be very careful, and warned that Uncle Kai was also injured by this strange guy. Yuquan realized that his affairs were bad, because he did not expect to meet someone here who could hurt him. And if he had only known about his great strength and abilities earlier, could he even be a demonic cultivator? The fact is that demonic cultivators have always sought power by any means to be the strongest, practicing with strict discipline and strict rules. Again, they are no different from a group of madmen. The man must finish the fight as soon as possible. Something began to glow around his hand, and the girl noticed it. What is it? The opponent attacked Zhuo Fan, and he did not expect this at all. Then Yuquan informed the guy that his AI stream was sealed, and even if he had other skills, the guy would not be able to use them. Yu Fei in the background supported her cousin to kill Zhuo, and he ordered the guy to go to hell with one wave of his hand. But Zhuo Fan used the blood shadow palm. The opponent did not expect this, and he already flew back from the force of the blow. He didn't understand how such a thing was even possible, because the guy's stream was sealed. He had sealed it himself. How was he able to use martial arts skills? The younger master started shouting that Brother Zhuo was just amazing and incredible, and such simple attacks could not defeat him. But suddenly, Zhuo Fan got hit, and he started bleeding from his mouth. No one understood what had happened. And then Yuquan began to explain to them that it was because he used his skills at a time when his AI stream was sealed, which means he's going to die soon. The blonde asked what he was saying. The long-haired man pretended to be upset, because if their strength was equal, then the man would be able to fight in full force. But at the moment, looking at the current condition of the guy, and even though he is injured, he can still kill him with just one hand. A blonde stood in front of the guy, but he just laughed and said he wasn't going to kill her. They just shouldn't get in his way. The long-haired man swung at Zhuo, shouting for him to die.